And if you really enjoy that, well then you've just learned something about yourself, and I helped you discover that, and that's really, really cool. So maybe it's not about the value of the gift, maybe it's about the relationship between the people. The value of a relationship is difficult to create a market in. Imagine somebody that you really, really love, okay? You got them? How much money would I have to give you for you to never speak to them again? Now, there's probably a few people in your life where you're like, well, yeah, if you give me £1 million, I'd happily never speak to Dave again, he's a tool. But no, come on, somebody that you really, really love. I think about my best friends or my brothers, and you couldn't pay me not to ever see them again. Not because there's not enough money in the world, but because the value of those relationships isn't something that can be measured in money. It's just not that sort of thing. It's like trying to measure the distance to the moon in degrees Celsius. It's what philosophers call a category error. And once I realized that there are some things money can't buy, I started to wonder if there are some things that maybe money shouldn't buy. Like, for instance, children. There are a lot of children who need to be adopted, and there are a lot of families who would like to have children but can't. An economist might suggest, as Simon Posner once did, that we should create a market in adopting children. Let people bid on children, and the highest bidders get the kid. Bidforakid.com. Get the app now. But like with a relationship, we might say, don't have to, but we might, that the value of a child isn't something that can be just measured or best measured in money. That it's not that kind of thing, that it would corrupt it, not in the sense of bribery corruption, but in the sense that we misvalue it. Standard economics maintains that creating a market in something does not change the thing itself, but encouraging people to view something as a commodity that can be bought and sold does change the way they look at it. In his book, What Money Can't Buy, the philosopher Michael Sandel cites an example of a school where parents kept turning up late to pick up their kids, so the staff couldn't go home because they had to stay and watch them. And the staff got so sick of it that they started fining parents who turned up late. Now, we might expect that parents would start turning up on time because they suddenly have a financial incentive to be there. But they didn't. More and more parents started turning up late because they were no longer viewing lateness as an imposition that they shouldn't inflict on someone else. They were viewing it as a service for which they could pay, as a commodity that they could consume. To take another topical example, consider something like immigration. A lot of public discourse about immigration boils down to market logic. Are they good for us or bad for us? Are they good for our employers, our economy? But doesn't that value immigration in terms of what it does for us, rather than in terms of what it does for immigrants? I invite you to the question, and feel free to reject it, either wholly or in part, but I invite you to ask, what if the value of stuff like immigration isn't measured or best measured in what it does for us, but in terms of the happiness that it allows somebody else to achieve in their life? 2016 has not been a year in which many people have asked that question. When we create a market in something, we don't just change the role it plays, we change the role we play. We cast ourselves in the role of consumers. I don't like the idea of taking money not to see my loved ones, because that presents our relationship as a resource that I am consuming and would be willing to exchange for something of similar value. But I think that's a category error. Maybe when we talk about immigration, we too often cast ourselves in the role of consumers of a resource made up of human beings. I invite you to the idea that consumer is not an identity that we have to have all the time. There's a famous bit in Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice, where the character of Portia tries to persuade the villain of the play, Shylock, to have mercy. And she says, "The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes." In other words, some things have a value that can't be measured in money. Things like love, generosity, mercy. They're not like oil, a resource where the more you consume, the less you have. They're like a muscle. The more you use them, the stronger they become. You might think that sounds very sappy and Christmassy and naive, but category errors are very, very real. And if philosophers like Sandel are right, then maybe market logic increases the likelihood of them. So this Christmas, if you are giving or receiving gifts, I invite you to consider what it is that you value and whether it really is the gift that's valuable to you. And if you are celebrating it, allow me to wish you a very Merry Christmas. Can you see that? I can see my breath. That is how cold it is in my flat. I can't afford to turn the heating on. Patreon.com/philosophytube allows me to pay the rent and afford food. Even $1 a month would massively, massively make my Christmas and my New Year. So anything you can do to help would be very much appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe.